welcome along to the Planning and Rights of Way Committee. I'm Councillor Richard Butler, the Chairman, and with me today are the councillors. I have Councillor Creamer, who is my Vice Chairman, Councillor Adams, Councillor Camilleri, Corden, Meakin, Owen, Purdue-Horan, Sam Smith, Tom Smith, and Councillor Williamson. As you know, we're on YouTube, and so we're being broadcast live, and it will be kept for publication should anyone want to watch it again in the future. The first item on the agenda is, actually before I do that, I should just thank Newark and Sherwood District Council for hosting us this morning. We're, for various reasons, we're not able to be in County Hall, so we're here in Newark, so thank you for having us. So item 1 is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 26th of July. Are we happy that I sign those? Yep. Okay, thank you. And apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Fielding and Councillor Henshaw, and Councillor Tom Smith replaces Councillor Motson for this meeting only. Thank you.
Thank you. And item 3, which is any declarations of interest, pecuniary or any private interest to declare? I suspect not. Or, no? Okay, thank you. And declarations of lobbying. Do any members present have any instances of lobbying to declare? No. So before we go any further, I'd like to say that because of the nature of today's agenda, with several reports dealing with related road improvements, the meeting will follow a slightly different procedure. Initially, I'll move all the recommendations of the reports dealing with the road improvements, reports numbered 5 to 10. There will then be one presentation by officers covering all of the road improvement reports, followed by any questions for clarification. Following the presentation, the speeches relating to all the road improvement reports will be delivered, followed by any questions or clarifications. We'll then debate each of the reports and vote on each of the individual reports in turn before moving on to debate and vote on the remaining 2 items, reports 11 and 12, and any discussion on the work programme. I hope this is clear, but if not, I trust it will become clear as the meeting progresses. So, I move the recommendations on page 55, 111, 139, 158, 206 and 268 of the agenda pack. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Creamer.
Seconded and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. So we now go into the reports, and I'll ask Mr. Joel Marshall to introduce the initial 6 reports on the agenda today. So, Mr. Marshall, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good. This presentation relates to 6 individual planning applications for junction improvement works along the A614 and the A6097 road corridor. The applicant is the Police Department at the County Council, and they're leading this project to improve this part of the major road network through the county in partnership with the Department for Transport and other local authorities and agencies. The 614 is a vital north-south route through the centre of the county, linking into the A6097 at its southern end, and then that joins on to the A46. The road links rural communities together and with the City of Nottingham, and it plays an important route for accessing local visitor attractions in the Sherwood area. Parts of it act as a diversionary route to the strategic road network in times of disruption, and it's an enabler for local regeneration and housing growth, particularly around the Ollerton and Billsthorpe area. 6 junctions have now been identified as requiring improvement or enlargement, as shown on this overview plan. The top 5 lie within the Newark and Sherwood district area, and the 6th at the bottom is at East Bridgeford within Rushcliffe Borough. We're going to take you through each of these running north to south. Starting with Ollerton, members will be aware this is a key intersection on the A614 and the A6097, and a gateway to the Sherwood area. As shown here, the roundabout is constrained to the east by the conservation area here, and to the west by the Berklands West and Ollerton Corner Triple SI and the Shield Heath Nature Reserve. There are a number of roadside services and fast food and drink outlets on the roundabout itself, as well as 4 residential properties. So this is a view of the existing roundabout. And then we've got a view on the 614 coming up from the south. And you can see the McDonald's and the other restaurants on the junction. And then we've got a view on the Mansfield Road coming up to the roundabout. And then we've got a view on the corner of the 614 and the 616. That corner is part of the Triple SI. This is one of the properties on the junction, number 1 Forest Side Cottage, and their garden directly on the roundabout corner. This is a view along Newark Road, which is a bus-only route leading out of Ollerton. So the proposal here is for an enlarged roundabout with 2 lanes leading onto, circulating around, and then leaving the roundabout before merging back to single lanes. The bus-only Newark Road would be rerouted onto the Ollerton Road, removing that current sick farm from the roundabout. 2 new toucan crossings would be installed over the A614 and the A6075, along with new footways. There'd be upgraded street lighting as well. Various parcels of land would be acquired around the roundabout to enable its enlargement, including that part of the garden we saw a moment ago at number 1 Forest Side Cottage, some landscaped areas around the pub and the McDonald's, and also the corner of the Triple SI, which we showed you a moment ago as well. Changes to access are proposed for the Costa Coffee or Big Fish car park, with the entrance moving further south towards an adjacent residential property. A new access drive would be created to number 1 Forest Side Cottage off Ollerton Road. Certain details remain to be developed for these. The landscaping proposals here show new species-rich hedgerows to replace those that would need to be removed. There are areas of acid grassland and heathland scrub, and in the middle of the roundabout there would be tree planting to create a new feature. So this is a before and after visualisation looking on the A614 from the north towards the roundabout. You can see the road widening and the additional lanes and the cut into the Triple SI on the right-hand side. We've got another visualisation here on the Mansfield Road approaching the roundabout. And again, you can see road widening and additional lanes, and you can also see the relocated access to the Costa Coffee and Big Fish car park moving closer to the residential property, which is roughly where the photo is taken. Okay, and then we're moving on quickly now to Billsthorpe. Yeah, thank you. So Billsthorpe, the existing situation is a crossroads, a priority crossroads between the 614, which runs north-south, Mickledale Lane, which runs east into the village, and Ingersoll Lane, which runs west, and that has a bridle-way status. The proposal here is to create a new replacement junction between the A614 and Mickledale Lane. That's a view or views of the existing junction, and on the corner there are some cottages and the Limes Cafe on the other side. And that's a view along Mickledale Lane. We've got a pair of bus stops near to the junction, and there are managed hedgerows either side. There's a weight limit on that road which prevents HGVs other than for local access. The replacement junction would be by means of a new roundabout to the south of the crossroads with a link road back to Mickledale Lane, where there would be a new mini roundabout. The existing end of Mickledale Lane at the crossroads would be closed to vehicular traffic and the road surface partly lifted and landscaped. It would be reinforced for utility vehicles who need to gain access through a gate at that point. Walkers and cyclists would be able to continue to use that section of the closed off lane to be able to gain access to the crossing outside the Limes Cafe and then over the A614 to Ingersoll Lane. New access would be created into the Strawson's farming complex, which is just to the right on that plan there. That plan does show 2 points of access, although the northern one has since been deleted from the scheme. The plans also include new LED street lighting along the roundabout and along the new link road, and extensive landscaping, new hedgerows, wet ditches and grassland. So we've got some more before and after visualisations. So that is a visualisation looking south on the A614 towards the new roundabout that would be created. And then there's another one looking across the field where the link road is at a slight cutting there. But you can't quite see it, but it is in a slight cutting back to Mickledale Lane. So the next application, moving on, is to White Post Roundabout. This is currently a 4-arm roundabout at the centre of several popular visitor attractions, with the A614 running north-south. And the proposal here is very simple, actually. It's to undertake a general refurbishment of this junction, upgraded lighting, resurfacing. There's no improvements here in terms of there's no proposals to expand the junction or enlarge it or take additional land. The fourth one is at the Warren Hill Gyratory Junction. Now this is where the A6097 joins into the A614. This is located at an elevated open countryside situation. It's just within the Greenbelt as well. There's a caravan sales business on one corner, but there are no other immediate properties. And this is a general view looking south. So the left lane there is for traffic wishing to go onto the A6097, and the right lane is for traffic continuing south on the A614 towards Nottingham. Just visible is just a turning area in the middle there that enables currently traffic to turn either back on itself as a U-turn or to route south onto the A6097. Not shown on there is an unusual arrangement at the other side of the junction, whereby traffic entering from the south on the A6097 gives way firstly to A614 traffic and then a second time to northbound A614 traffic on the near side rather than on the usual side. So that's why it's unusual. The proposal here is a redesign of that with some limited physical works. That unusual give-way arrangement would be replaced by a merge-in-turn arrangement running north, and that would basically involve new road markings along with curbing and surfacing. The turning area to the north would be shut off to vehicular traffic. Moving on to Loudham, we're now on the A6097 corridor. This is where the road interconnects with the A612 running to Nottingham and the Southall Road running to Southall. And it's on the edge of the village in the Greenbelt. The A6097 runs as a dual carriageway through this section. And on the northwestern side, there is the cricket club. There's a band of trees and a green area around the War Memorial. That provides a gateway into the village. There's some ribbon development along the A612 Nottingham Road to the south, and a large arable field on the west side. This is a view, hopefully, looking, we'll get there. So some views here of the existing roundabout there, and the approach to the roundabout from the north. And then some views of the green areas with the War Memorial there, a short distance away. And that's a view of the large arable field, which has got the ash tree there as well. Okay, so the proposal here is to enlarge that roundabout, but into an elliptical form, in order to avoid the mature trees and the landscaped areas. There would be 2 lanes all the way around the roundabout, and the 612 coming up from Nottingham on the southwest would be widened into 3 lanes on the approach. First lane providing a left turn lane onto the A6097 north, requiring removal of the hedgerow and the large mature ash tree. There'd be a pair of new toucan crossings over the A6097 north arms, linking into a shared cycle and pedestrian footway. New street lighting would be installed, including on the main A6097, either side of the roundabout. Shown in pink is a new access drive to serve 4 residential properties on the southwest corner. That would replace their current direct access off the road. At number 15, which is the corner on the corner there, it is proposed to transfer a small area of highway verge to this property to enable access. So the application also seeks approval for a change of use of this small area, marked in red, from highway verge land to residential curtilage land. The landscaping includes all the replacement hedgerows, a new wet and dry water retention area there on the corner of the field. That would form part of the surface water drainage system and would act to attenuate the runoff from the highway. That is a before and after visualisation on the A612 Nottingham Road, and we're looking at the additional lanes that would be created on the approach to the roundabout and the new access drive for numbers 15 to 21 Nottingham Road. We've got another visualisation looking down from a distance, looking onto the new roundabout or the enlarged roundabout with the water attenuation area at the bottom of the field. The final application is at the southern end of the A6097 at East Bridgeford in Rushcliffe, and this is a signal controlled crossroads. And to the north we have Kirk Hill, which takes a dog leg leading into East Bridgeford village, and to the south there's another minor road leading towards Newton. This junction is at an elevated position, it's in the green belt. The entrance along Kirk Hill forms part of the start of the village conservation area, and there are also a number of public rights of way in this area. So these next views will show the current junction, including that basic pedestrian crossing. And then entering Kirk Hill, there is this continuous mature hedgerow, an outgrown hedgerow, which continues along Kirk Hill and around the corner. And we've got a row of distinctive cottages there as well. The proposal here is to widen the main A6097 to create 2 lanes in both directions through the junction, as well as re-providing a dedicated right turn lane on each side. Now this would utilise land primarily within the grass verge area to the south. However, some trees would also have to be removed to the northwest, along with a stretch of hedgerow, which would be replanted later on. there would be some widening of the tight corner leading into Kirk Hill, and there'd be new lighting as well and new signals. On Kirk Hill itself, there are specific measures here for non-motorised users. It is proposed to relocate a bridleway running along the northern side of Kirk Hill to replace its current alignment on the south side, which is actually impassable, and it's an anomaly on the definitive map. So this would require the removal of the outgrown hedgerow and its replanting on a line further back. And that new bridleway would connect into the existing bridleway network running northwest and southeast. Now, secondly, in response to a local need for equestrians to cross over the main A6097, there is a proposal for a full Pegasus Crossing to be installed around 100 metres southeast of the junction. And this would link back to East Bridgeford Road on the south side with a new bridle path. And the plans have been amended now to place that bridle path behind the existing field hedge so that horses are screened from the main traffic. And a further amendment has been to add some habitat scrub behind the hedgerow on Kirk Hill. This is a before and after visualisation showing widening on the main junction and geometric widening on the corner into Kirk Hill. And from a similar position, looking the other way, again, a widened junction and replanted hedgerow as well. And I think that's it on the slide. So I'm just going to run through quickly the planning issues on all six. So all six have been assessed individually and cumulatively, including through an environmental impact assessment process. So it follows that members need to decide each of these applications separately and individually on their own merits. There are certain similarities in the findings on the various planning and environmental effects, but also a number of individual site sensitivities. So we'll briefly cover the main issues. The 5 proposals, which are in the Newark area, the Newark and Sherwood area, can be supported in principal planning terms to varying degrees. And that's because the local plan and its underpinning infrastructure assessment work identifies the need for improvements at these junctions. The support is particularly strong at Ollerton, where the plan safeguards the land around the junction to enable its enlargement, including that little corner of the SSSI. And there is an identified need, a long-standing need, to resolve the congestion issues at that roundabout. Proposals at Ollerton and at Mickledale Lane also attract support due to their role in supporting local regeneration and particular developments in the area. In particular, the redevelopment at the former Thoresby Colliery is restricted until Ollerton Roundabout is enlarged. And there are also other ongoing housing developments in the Bilsthorpe area. The 6th proposal, the Kirk Hill proposal at East Bridgeford, is subject to a different local plan context, and it has not been identified as requiring improvement through that local plan process. The plan does also prioritise sustainable travel solutions over the creation of additional highway capacity. The need to enlarge this junction has, however, been subsequently identified outside of the plan process. Firstly, there is a planning obligation in place on the lead developer at the nearby former RAF Newton site to undertake improvements to that junction. The County Council, as the Highways Authority, has found that not to be satisfactory and has identified a need for a more substantial scheme to provide additional through capacity on the A6097. And this has led to the inclusion of that as an additional project within the wider project. and a contribution is now to come from the private developer. Traffic modelling also shows that without the new junction capacity at Kirk Hill, the existing queuing and congestion there will get worse. There are therefore material considerations which inform the support for that particular scheme. Whilst the creation of additional highway capacity is least favoured by the Rushcliffe plan over more sustainable travel means, the project would provide also a number of benefits for non-motorised users as well. So generally on most of the schemes, provision for these users, non-motorised users, has been incorporated. There would be Toucan crossings at Ollerton, which would for the first time enable safe access from the town to the Costa Coffee, the public house and into Shield Heath. There would be a Toucan crossing at Loudham and a Pegasus crossing at Kirk Hill. The Mickledale Lane proposal does not offer much improvement for non-motorised users, but the existing crossing by the Limes Cafe will remain, and access up to it will be left. It's not designed for equestrians, but there is little usage by those riders. At Kirk Hill, however, there is a full package of improvements for equestrians, and there is a much clear existing need for these works and to improve safety for these users. Safety has been taken into account in these proposed designs. More complex multi-lane roundabouts can lead to more accidents. However, this is a trade-off against the day-to-day added capacity that would be provided, and further safety audits are likely to be undertaken as the final designs are designed. At Ollerton, there are changes to access at Forestside Cottage and the Costa Coffee. These are areas that appear to require further design work at this stage, and these can be covered by recommended planning conditions. At Loudham, the proposed residential access drive is further advanced, and it has been shown to be acceptable in terms of highways and vehicle manoeuvring. There is a local objection on that, but the applicant has demonstrated that vehicles will be able to leave each property in a forward gear to use that new access drive. There is details of boundary treatment that, however, need to be agreed, and there is a planning condition recommended. There is an objection, or there was an objection, from a local cycling club to the Warren Hill proposal, and in particular from the closure of the small turning facility. That can be overcome with a compromise design, which will retain a small path for the cyclists, whilst closing it to vehicular traffic. We've seen the draft details of that and had discussions, and it appears possible that the final details can be conditioned and agreed. There are no highway objections ultimately to any of these proposals, and there have been no objections from town, parish or the district or borough councils. Comments East Bridgeford from the parish council have been taken into account, including the need to provide a pedestrian crossing point. The proposals at Ollerton and East Bridgeford would directly impact and indirectly impact on the conservation areas. At Ollerton, the conservation boundary has recently been pulled back. However, there would still be some less than substantial harm to its character and appearance, particularly through the removal of hedgerows, potentially from additional signage, road markings and details that have yet to be fully designed. It's also, the Newark Road is also an historic causeway and later a turnpike, and closing it off would affect the way it's understood as an historic route. There's potential for archaeology there as well. There may be the remains of a toll house, potentially under the roundabout. The council's heritage advisors are happy. Neilk and Sherwood comments that more could be done with the landscaping, however. Conditions are ultimately requested to cover matters of outstanding details and for the archaeological mitigation scheme that will be needed. The level of harm is low to the conservation area and clearly outweighed by the public benefits of improving Ollerton Roundabouts. It should also end the practice of some drivers trying to cut up Station Road through the heart of the conservation area. And that would be a direct benefit to the conservation area and the amenity of that area. At East Bridgeford, the widening of Kirk Hill, involving the initial removal of the large stretch of hedgerow in order to relocate the bridleway, is directly harmful to the conservation area. And the conservation area appraisal identifies this hedgerow as a positive verdant gateway feature into the village. This would be replanted further back, but it would take years to develop, and the current tight character of that area would become more open with a wider verge area. It is less than substantial harm, and it is capable of being justified and outweighed in order to deliver the public benefits from improving this junction, including for those bridleway users, the horse riders, walkers, as well as drivers on the main road. The improvements at Loudham do not impact on any conservation area, but the nearby War Memorial is Grade 2 listed. It will remain unaffected. However, we're advised that noisy construction works should pause around the November remembrance events that take place. Generally, there are no impacts other than from temporary construction noise to these listed buildings, and in general amenity and landscape terms, the four main proposals, that is accepting White Post and the Warren Hill proposals, whilst there'd be a more intensified highway environment, including from widening and additional street lighting, the replacement planting and landscaping should in time tie these works back into the local landscape and give an appropriate management of that landscaping. The roundabout at Ollerton would come closer to Forestside Cottage, and part of the garden to the corner property would be taken, and they would lose that. However, no increase in noise impact is predicted at the property, and details of the replacement boundary can be conditioned. At Billsthorpe, the landscaping again should assimilate the new highway infrastructure into the local landscape. At Loudham, the removal of the field hedgerows and the mature ash tree, that would be replaced by the landscaped water attenuation area. Crucially, it avoids impacting on the mature trees beside the cricket club and the War Memorial. In all cases, there are no predicted significant or unacceptable changes to noise or air quality. There will be ultimately temporary construction impacts and local disruption. Traffic management during these works would be for the County Highways Authority, working with Via East Midlands to manage in the usual way. There is potential for a small number of residential properties to experience noise, vibration and general disruption, and this would be managed as best as possible through a management plan, a construction management plan. The Warren Hill and the White Post proposals are very minor in nature and not expected to lead to any amenity or environmental issues. There are some negative impacts to agricultural soils to consider. The largest impact is at Billsthorpe, where the link road would cut through an arable field, and this is understood to comprise some best and most versatile soils at grade 2. Whilst these could be reused elsewhere, the severing of the field would create two smaller areas which may not be as commercially viable for arable farming in the future. At Loudham, the water attenuation area would use the lower corner of that large arable field, again understood to comprise best and most versatile soils. There would also be a need for temporary construction compound sites and the management of soils for that and for their reinstatement thereafter. The four main proposals include detailed surface water drainage systems designed to attenuate the drainage of the surface water and provide a betterment over the existing conditions. There are no objections from the County Council's flood team or from the Environment Agency. However, further work is needed on the designs at Ollerton and at Loudon under condition. Ollerton would also remain at risk from flooding from the River Mourne. However, it is essential infrastructure. The sequential and the exception test can be passed, and there would always be a safe means of escape from that junction should it flood. Turning to biodiversity, officers have sought to ensure the four main schemes deliver a net gain for ecology through the landscaping designs. The level of gain differs from site to site, the largest being at Bilsthorpe, the smallest gain at Kirk Hill. The County Council's Natural Environment Manager is happy, but has requested final details are secured under condition, along with the long-term management of the landscaping. And this will be important for a number of reasons, obviously for the conservation areas, for biodiversity and for landscaping purposes. There is a particular sensitivity at Ollerton where 0.05 hectares of the adjacent SSSI would be directly lost at the northwest corner of the roundabout. There is a policy presumption against the loss or damage to a SSSI, which is a nationally important site for biodiversity. It is actually unusual to have to consider such a proposition. The loss of part of this SSSI appears unavoidable, however, if the roundabout is to be enlarged in situ. It's also constrained by built development on all sides, practically. The corner of the SSSI is made up of predominantly roadside amenity grass, along with areas of gorse and scrub. It's not the heathland habitats for which the SSSI is predominantly designated. There would therefore be a technical loss of part of a SSSI rather than the clear loss of protected habitats in this case. Notwithstanding this, the applicant has worked with Natural England and ourselves to formulate compensation and mitigation measures, including proposals to undertake off-site habitat enhancements at the nearby Cockglode and Rotary Woods Nature Reserve. The County Council's Natural Environment Manager is content with that, recommends conditions to mitigate construction impacts and to provide the net gain resulting from the landscaping works. I can report that after the papers had gone to print, Natural England have now formally removed their objection to the Ollerton proposal, subject to conditioning the compensation and mitigation measures for that loss of part of the SSSI. I have also had a late representation from the Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust objecting to Ollerton Roundabout. Amongst the points raised is that the loss of part of a SSSI should not be seen as setting a precedent, including for public authority works, and that a much greater area of compensatory habitat management should be required. The Natural Environment Manager, the Council's Natural Environment Manager, is however satisfied with the work that has been undertaken and with the level of net gain and Natural England are also content with the level of compensation being proposed. Lastly, finance comments have been received as a late update. There are no specific financial implications arising. The County Council has submitted an outline business case to the Department for Transport to support the proposal to improve these 6 junctions, and the decision on the business case and the financial implications arising will be the subject of future reports to Cabinet. In conclusion, the planning balance in each case is set out in each report in the conclusion sections. Although the balance varies between each schemes, officers consider there to be clear support from the development plan in the case of the 5 Newark-and-Sherwood schemes, whilst the Kirk Hill scheme results in no overall conflict with the Rushcliffe local plan, and there are material considerations to add to the support for this proposal. The projects, as pieces of public infrastructure, would deliver public benefits to the travelling public and to a range of non-motorised users. There would be net gains for ecology and improved drainage. The proposals together reinforce the role of the A614 and the A6097 as part of the major road network, improving access, including for tourists and visitors to the county, and supporting local regeneration and house building activity. So there are 6 recommendations, and in each case it is to approve planning permission subject to the planning conditions against each of the proposals. Thank you very much, Chair.
Well, thank you, Mr. Marshall. That was certainly a very long, detailed presentation, and quite rightly so. And you took us on quite a journey, literally, from Ollerton down to East Bridgeford, and I think that was very, very helpful. It's very detailed. We've got a very big report as well, but to actually see the photographs and the plans on the screen. Indeed, and along with your explanation, it's very helpful indeed. So thank you for that. Have a sip of water. So I just need to check now with members. Do we have any questions for the purpose of clarification at this stage? So no, because it was very detailed. There's an awful lot of information there. There's a lot to take in, but just need to check. So we do have a few speeches from visitors today and for these applications. So can I ask Mr. Barker, the clerk, just to explain the process and procedure, please?
Thank you, Chair. Each speaker will have a maximum of 3 minutes per report. Notice will be given to you when the final minute of your allotted time has arrived by me saying 1 minute. Speakers should not introduce new material, be that plan, photographs or written documents. And only issues relevant to the planning application should be addressed in the presentation. These include the impact on local residents and the environment, relevant planning policies and government guidance. You should not refer to non-planning issues such as property rights, covenants, loss of property value or view. Members of committee may ask you questions for the purposes of clarification, and the Chair will invite the relevant officer to respond to any factual matters raised by your presentation or subsequent questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. So our first speaker today is Mr. Steve White. So Mr. White would like to make yourself comfy. And the way it works is as soon as you're ready to address us, the right-hand button on the microphone will turn red, or press the button and it will switch on, and then we're ready to listen to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mr. Steve White, formerly of Ollerton birth, now resident of Wellow, Nottinghamshire for over the past 36 years. Over many years now, we have become blighted by speeding drivers and HGV weight-limited breaches. YEM, and in particular Ms. Jo Horton, has been very supportive and visited the village to walk around and implement further notification to help reduce the speeds being attained. We have also had support from the mobile speed camera unit, albeit their availability is extremely limited. I've also had very good service from Nottinghamshire County Council when there's been excessive HGV drivers breaking the 7.5 tonne weight limit through the village. The issue surrounding Allerton Roundabout and in general the A614 alterations will add further traffic to what has now been established as a shortcut between Allerton and its surrounding villages and Bilsthorpe with a link direct to the A614. I have also met with Nottinghamshire PCC, Ms Caroline Henry, and she has offered to support any initiatives that we can think of to alleviate the situation while the construction is taking place with the alterations you've mentioned. The massive increase in new home developments and increased development of the industrial sites both at Booton and at Bilsthorpe have also increased the volume and speeds on a daily basis as people travel to and from work and other suppliers. Wellow cannot cope anymore, and the restricted safety factors of Equine Road in particular are not being addressed fully. The road, particularly for those who are not aware, has a 30-mile speed limit, a 7.5 tonne weight restriction, 2 blind bends, one severe narrowing of the road, which just so happens to be at the point of one of the blind bends, a pedestrian circular route through the village itself, the rear entrance to Weller House School, which is both for deliveries and school children's walkabouts and church activities, a recognised ramblers route, regular horse riders from Weller Riding School, a single narrow pedestrian footpath on one side of the road. Mobility scooters have increased in dimensions, and as such, many elderly residents are using the road rather than negotiating narrowing sections of the pedestrian footpath. When there is an accident on the A1 or on the 614, for some reason Wellow seems to pick the blunt of it. It absolutely blocks Equine Road totally. No residents can get out, emergency service cannot get in. For years I've been monitoring the police attendances and deployments when speeding drivers become intolerable. Unfortunately, the current head of Nottinghamshire Police has repeatedly refused to visit the village to see for himself what is ruining the lives of residents and visitors in Wellow, and now they have repeatedly failed to comply with the FOI requests for deployment figures and records of speeding drivers. The PCC has confirmed they cannot cope with the FOI to any traffic-related issues, and they are so far behind. We have proven historically that any hold-ups and for whatever on the 614 drivers are immediately alerted on their mobile phones, navigation systems, that the alternative and often quicker route is to divert through Equine and Wellow or reverse order to minimise their journey disturbance. This will continue even after the alterations are made. What is required prior to the commencement of works, if you can please take this on board, a request for Mr Joel Marshall, Principal Planning Officer of Notts County Council, to visit Wellow for an informal walk around and review prior to commencement of works. Agreement that highway cable monitoring of volume and speed installations are installed on Equine Road Wellow 1 month in the lead up to commencement of the 614 and Allerton Roundabout associated works, and their findings confirmed in a report prior to commencement of works. Just to give you a quick glimpse of that, maximum speeds have been identified previously at 61.2 miles an hour, and with the daily average work Monday to Friday, we're looking in the high hundreds to low thousands through this village on Equine Road itself. The above monitoring to be replicated on a quarterly / 6 monthly basis for the duration of the works. Continued monitoring following the completion of works for a period of 1 year. During its period of works, regular deployments to be made by the Nottinghamshire Police mobile speed camera and handheld gun operatives, the positioning of which to be agreed and must be adhered to more noticeable areas of speeding drivers. The regular review and response personally from the newly promoted head of Nottinghamshire Police into the deployment activities and their findings. Additional and visual notifications to alert drivers gaining access through Equine and Wellow that speed restrictions must be adhered to at all times and will be in place for the safety of residents. Additional involvement of IEM and the installation of a permanent speed alert sign near the Red Line Public House. Temporarily, there is one in position at the moment. Additional signage required to alert drivers of the restrictions en route along Equine Road. Reduction of the speed limit to 20 miles an hour at the point of the road narrowing on Equine Road, which encompasses a blind bend, limited visual exit from the rear entrance to Weller House School. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. A lot of information for us to take in there, and which I think we did. Do any members have any questions of not a debate, but a clarification for Mr. White on his points? No. Okay. So, but we've got them very clear, and thank you very much. Could you just turn the microphone off? That's great. Thank you. Right. Sorry, yes, Mr. Marshall. Do you want to come back on any of those points?
Thank you. Yes. I think the issue of traffic rerouting is something that the applicant is very much alive to. There is actually a planning condition recommended, and it's number 13 on the Ollerton papers on page 63. Effectively, there is a need to do traffic studies before and after construction, and that will enable the Highway Authority and via East Midlands to see and assess how traffic changes in the local area after the works have completed, and whether there are any unintentional consequences in terms of minor roads attracting increased traffic flows, for example. They can then react to that and make any further changes to the local highway network as may be needed. So there is that there in the condition as a safeguard for, as I say, unintended changes, unintended traffic changes in the local area, and Wellow would be very much in that area affected. In terms of during construction, that is not something that the planning system necessarily needs to get involved in. The County Council has established mechanisms to manage roadworks on the network, and that will be managed by the County Council and via East Midlands. We will, under planning condition number 9, be looking to control certain details in terms of the construction management, but we've got lorry routing included in that condition. However, the general day-to-day traffic management will be for the Highways Department. So I think we've got both the construction period and the post-construction period covered by planning conditions, and as I say, the applicant is alive to the wider area and alive to the issues that might that affect the wider area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. That does cover many of the points raised by Mr. White, and conditions are always an interesting read, aren't they? And are very helpful. Councillor Smith, do you want to come in on something?
Thank you for that response. Just to clarify further details on condition 13, will that include the County Council putting the speed cables down and monitoring the impact it will have on vehicles speeding through that village? And also, is there anything we can do under that condition to encourage trading standards, which I understand is a County Council arm, to monitor HGVs as well, which is the point the resident was making?
Yes, thank you. Taking reverse order, I understand the Ekring Road or Ekring Lane in Wellow has a weight restriction on it. That will remain in place, and any breaches of that weight restriction are enforceable. And you're correct that the trading standards team in the County Council has a lorry watch programme, and members of the community can work with that, engage with that, and report breaches, so that will continue. In terms of speeding, I mean, in terms of the condition 13, there is a methodology to agree there in terms of traffic counts. I note it doesn't specifically talk about traffic speeds. Predominantly, it is about volume of traffic, but I think, you know, the nature of traffic also is relevant there in terms of, you know, is it the types of vehicles, you know, and whether they are changing their routes, and whether the speed is increased or decreased. I think it's a relevant point to pick up, and the applicant who is in the room is hearing that right now, and we'll bear it in mind when the submission comes in under condition 13.
Does that help? Good. Yeah, indeed. The applicant it is helpful to have the applicant in the room because they do hear all these points that are being raised. And the lorry watch, I know from where I live, the lorry watch does work. If you have lorries coming through a limited area, there is a thing on the county council website, and you literally just type in the number plate and all the rest of it, and they do. Well, my experience is they do follow up. So that's very helpful. Right. So we'll move on to our second speaker, who is the speech is from Mr. Wagstaff. That's you, isn't it? And but the clerk is going to read the speech out. So, Mr. Barker, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've noticed that drivers regularly turning left out of the car park only glance towards the roundabout, and if nothing is coming, they pull straight out to the left. We could be crossing the path or road, so our fear is it's just not safe for Costa customers, let alone our grandchildren and us. Customers using the proposed new entrance adjacent to our property would, in my view, be dangerous, and the old entrance should be left as it is. At the moment, when vehicles turn off of the main road into the car park, would it not be a safer option, because commercial delivery vehicles and waste collection vehicles would have difficulty in manoeuvring while in the car park when it is full? If the proposed development is passed, it would be safer to have a stop line, not a give way sign with signs on the exit. The main problem is the crossover points, because they are too close together and it's an accident waiting to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barker and Mr. Wagstaff. Could we just confirm you're referring to? I'm on points of clarification now. What property is Mr.
It's the only house, actually, on Mansfield Road.
Sorry, say again.
It's the only house adjacent to the Costa Coffee, right, on the 6075.
I just wanted to be sure which property we were talking about, so thank you for that. So have we got a photograph of that?
Yeah, I think that photo is effectively taken from the driveway.
Right, okay. I just wanted to be clear in my own mind as to where you're referring. Could you just pop your light off? Yeah. So that's the photograph taken from Mr. Wagstaff's property, and is concerned about the crossing of it there. So
that shows how the junction is going to move.
so we've got the current and the proposal there. Do you want to pick up on any of those points that Mr. Wagstaff's raised?
Yes, thank you. That before and after visualisation, I think, shows the proposal moving that car park entrance closer to the residential property, which is where the photograph is being taken from. My answer is that this is a detail that has not been fully decided upon by the applicant yet. It is an area that requires further design work, including any reconfiguration within the car park that may be required as well. And we have a planning condition, again, number 11, where there are details that require further approval, and point D is the final access arrangements into that car park. There is, however, nothing in front of me that suggests that is unsafe, what is being proposed. It is being moved so that vehicles exiting the car park have fewer lanes to cross over if they're travelling onto the roundabout. So if they're turning right out of there towards the roundabout, it is safer to do it at that point rather than nearer the roundabout, where there would be multiple lanes to get over and across. The issue about visibility, I say there's no highways issues identified on visibility. The point about a stop line could be looked into, but ultimately drivers would have to drive with proper care and attention and look and make the appropriate manoeuvre.
Okay, thank you. But the point is that the conditions there do reflect some of the concerns, but also, again, as we had before, the applicant is in the room with us, and I'm sure is picking up, and indeed we are going to hear from the applicant in a few moments. So unless there's any other points of clarification, no? Okay, so thank you. You can either stay there or go back to the comfy seats. Okay, absolutely. But thank you for your points. And so our final speaker on this is the applicant, Joe Davis. So Joe, if you'd like to come and talk to us, please. You've got your support squad there, and so as soon as you're ready, if you can address the committee, thank you.
Dear Planning Committee members, I am pleased to be able to introduce these 6 applications to you, which collectively form the A614/A6097 Major Road Network Scheme. I'm Joelle Davis. I'm the Group Manager for Growth, Infrastructure and Development at the County Council. And behind me are representatives from the project team. So I've got Tom Boyland, who's the Project Manager for the County Council. Give a wave. Got Cathy Gillespie, who's the Project Director for Via East Midlands. And I've got Steve Millington, who's the Project Manager for Via East Midlands. As you'll be aware, the A614, A6097 is a key route in the county, running from Ollerton in the north, 18 miles down to East Bridgeford in the south. This is mainly a single carriageway road which provides a connection to many rural villages and carries up to 20,000 vehicles a day. A number of key visitor attractions are also served by this route, including Clumber Park, Rufford Abbey and Sherwood Forest. The 6 junctions included in the regeneration scheme have been identified to address specific capacity and or safety issues. This will represent over £28 million of investment in our public highways and will be delivered by 2026-27. This scheme builds on the recent improvements already secured at the Rose Cottage and Lock Hill junctions. I'm sure you'll be familiar with the queue in traffic at Ollerton Road, and as we've heard, the local rat runs through Ollerton and Wellow, which gets used as alternatives to avoid the queues. For those of you that are based further south, it won't be uncommon for you to be sitting at Loudon Roundabout on an evening as you're heading out of Nottingham with nearly 100 cars queuing in front of you. With the planned housing and employment growth in this area, these queue times are expected to be increased to a further 7 and 5 minutes respectively. The majority of the scheme, 5 of the 6 junctions, are within the Newark and Sherwood district. And as an area with significant growth and regeneration plans, this planned investment will help unlock a number of key housing and employment sites. This includes the 800 house development at Thoresby Colliery, along with 2.5 hectares of employment land, which will bring new jobs to the local area. In total, there is an expectation that this regeneration scheme will unlock £55 million of private investment into the county, and also leave us in £24 million of government funding, as well as £2 million from other private sources. Work on this scheme started pre-pandemic, and we've had several rounds of public consultation. Whilst we have ensured all feedback has been considered, we have also endeavoured to amend the details of junction improvements wherever possible to address any issues and concerns. I'm pleased to be able to tell you that this scheme now includes improved access for other road users by providing new crossing facilities for pedestrians and cyclists at Ollerton and Loudon as well as an improved bridleway and equestrian crossing at Kirk Hill. I would also like to reassure members of the Planning Committee that this is an ongoing process and there will be further consultation and engagement with members of the public and parish councils. In terms of just responding to Mr White's concerns and comments, we will be doing traffic monitoring, and this will include speeds going through the village. And with regard to Mr Wagstaff, we are going to be doing further safety audits on the junctions at Ollerton. So I just wanted to confirm that to the Planning Committee. This regeneration scheme provides the opportunity for the County Council as the local highway authority to secure and deliver a much needed set of junction improvements to boost our economy. The improvements to this spine road will help our residents, our businesses and our visitors, and will have a catalytic impact across the whole of the county and on our economy. This is why I'm asking you today to look favourably on these 6 applications. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very clear and concise, and thank you for picking up the points raised by our visitors, our speakers. That's very helpful. Members, do we have any clarifications for Mrs Davis? No, and her team. They produce all these drawings and the plans. It's a heck of a lot of work, and I don't underestimate the amount of work that's going into all this. And Mr Marsh, sorry, Councillor Camilleri, sorry, I didn't see you.
Yeah, just one question. There's a lot of work here. I know they're going to be staggered, I hope. You're not going to have 2 or 3 of these roundabouts at any given time. It's a bit silly to say that, but I have known it before. Because it is a busy road, and the delays may get bigger when you're doing the work. Okay, so they're not going to do. Okay, it's good.
Is that a relief? I think it probably is. Yes. Absolutely. Right. There's probably nothing to pick up from right. So thank you. That is very helpful. So and I genuinely am grateful for you and your colleagues to be here, and I'm sure the committee is as well, because it does, when we have questions from the public and others, it's marvellous so you've actually heard them and you understand the concerns. So great. Thank you very much. So we'll now debate and come to decisions on the reports in turn. So,
excuse me, Chair. Sorry, just before we move to the debate, could I request a quick 5-minute comfort break?
Yes, I think because we are going into debate. Are we all happy to do that? Let's just try and make it 5 minutes, though, because okay, let's do that. So it's 20 to 12 now. Let's aim to be back by 1:45. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to get ready to switch the YouTube on, and are you on? Is that a thumbs up?
Yeah, just getting our Okay, yep. Yep. So can we have the YouTube broadcaster reactivated, please? Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome back, as they say. We've had a lot of detail in the presentations. We're now ready to discuss, debate, and make some decisions on these. And I don't think, hopefully, this won't get too complicated. But we as you will have seen in the agenda, we have to make a decision on each application in turn. So we'll open up the floor now for the first part of the route, which is the Ollerton Roundabout. And so this is just like any other planning application now. Comments, questions, Councillor Owen. And then Councillor Owen, then Councillor Smith and Councillor Adams.
Chairman, yes, the Ollerton Roundabout. I do feel this morning that there's a spiritual presence amongst us. And I'm sure both you and Councillor Creamer will know what I'm referring to, because that spiritual presence, I do feel, has got to be the late and lamented former councillor Stella Smedley, whose raison d'etre in her later years was to get improvements to the Ollerton Roundabout. And I think she would share my sentiment when I say, at last. At long last. It has been a source of contention ever since I joined the County Council in 2005. I even remember sitting at a party conference some years ago when the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, announced funding for improvements along the A614 corridor. And today, what day is it? The 27th of September 2022, all these years later, we're actually a step along the way. This is so long overdue, it's unbelievable. And it's the same for the whole sequence of improvements that are proposed. And I think what is significant about all of these is that there is so little objection, but so much support. Now, I know we have heard some objection this morning from one or two residents. And I have to say to those residents, I hear what they say. What they have to say are not really planning issues. We suffer in all our divisions from speeding. And if we could debate that all day, and I don't propose to, but I think we have to put that to one side. This is economically significant for Nottinghamshire that we go ahead with these improvements. The only thing that disappoints me is that we're not actually dualling the whole of the A614, because that would make it so much better. Just like the A46, this road is crying out to be dualled, and you could argue that what we're proposing today, or what has been proposed today, is tinkering at the edges. Well, yeah, let's get on and tinker, but let's put forward a case when devolution takes place for investment in the A614 to improve the whole stretch of the road all the way up from Nottingham City, the boundaries of Nottingham City, all the way up to where it joins the A1 up in the north of the county. So I shall very much support all of the applications that are in front of this morning. And I say to the applicant, for goodness sake, get on and deliver as soon as you possibly can. And we await the improvements. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, thank you, Councillor Owen. And your point about the late lamented Councillor Smedley is certainly familiar to Councillor Creamer and I. And in fact, we've been, not just today, but previously been discussing this and referring to the Stella Island. Yeah. And I remember sort of when Stella was still with us, sitting in the chamber at County Hall here, and Stella was directly opposite me, and I can see a vision of her saying what she used to say even as I speak. And so there we are. But thank you for your points as well about the speeding issues. You're right, they're not technically planning issues, but they are matters of concern to residents, and as we've heard, they have been picked up. Probably no need to come back on any of those points. So the next speaker is Councillor Sam Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and how nice it is to hear today real voices of residents who are going to be impacted on these plans after reading 406 pages and the wonderful introduction from the officer there. So I thank the residents for coming along, and I listen to their concerns intently, and I make this point at former planning meetings, and I'll make it again, but just before I do, I'll say that I'm going to support it as it is. But it does frustrate me somewhat that we listen to feedback from residents and we can include those in as conditions because we are the authority that is in control of this application, as it were. So, and I welcome the response from the economic growth officer that she is going to take them into account, and further survey. We're yet to finalise what's going to be at that car park, and further surveys will carry on. And then the point about speeding, we can include speeding tubes in the monitoring that we take place. But that's words, and I totally believe they will be carried through. But that could happen in a few months' time. There's no timescales on that. It isn't in black and white that we are going to do that. So whilst we are in control of this application, I would feel more confident if that was written in black and white and we had that as a condition that we can follow through on. Because although, yes, that isn't a planning issue, it is still a condition we can apply, and all these applications are to do with highways, so why can't we get them in there when we could? Although, again, going back to the point, I welcome what the economic growth officer says, and that will be followed up, but I would feel more confident if they were there. But with all that said and done, I'm still going to support it and thank the residents for coming along.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. With regards to that, is it feasible to do an addition to a condition or an addition to a condition, or is it more of an advisory, perhaps, type of thing? Is it, Mr. Smith?
I think we can tweak the condition to include, where appropriate, speed counts, and we'll agree some wording with Chair and Vice Chair if that's okay. And again, that would be that condition 13.
That'd be marvellous, thank you. And 11D with the stop sign as well, if possible.
Okay.
Yep, we've got that, yeah. So we will do that. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Adams, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And you must echo Councillor Smith's point about having residents here. I think one thing we should always be aware of is that it's important we look after the people that live in the areas that these things affect, and not just the people trying to get from A to B. Something to which has always been a focus in my own area of Carlton East. And I think with this particularly, one of the bigger issues at Ollerton, and causes, interestingly enough, problems in Carlton East, where I am as well, is some of the issues around when the drive-throughs are busy in the fast food restaurants, McDonald's and things like that, and it does tend to push out into the highway. And one of the biggest issues with this site I have, having visited McDonald's a few too many times in my recent history, is that you can't get out very well, and it's a real problem on that junction. So I'd like to see in the plans what the actual access and arrangements are for the McDonald's, because although I say it with jest, it does, if there is a delay, you do get tailbacks running all the way through, and it causes backup problems onto the main highway. And it's a consistent problem across sections I've seen. Also, just going back to the gentleman's other points as well, I agree wholeheartedly with the traffic monitoring and speeding that Sam's raised also, because again, we've got to make sure that we're picking up these key points at this point, because it's only going to cost us time and effort to go back again in the future and make those changes, whether that be through surveys, whether that be through police intervention, whatever that ends up being. We could deal with that right now at point of entry and not have to deal with it again. What was the other thing I was going to say? I think that was it, actually. That was it. So really the McDonald's focus primarily from my perspective. Thank you.
So yes, the access to the McDonald's then. It is referenced on the map, it's on one of the plans, but would it help? Can we put it on the screen?
Your car there, what plugged into the electric charger?
Okay. Is that the one?
Yeah, just talk you through this proposal. I mean, McDonald's there is marked on the southeast corner. the entrance there is off the A614 and appears to be beyond the boundary of the proposed works, and therefore the access is unaffected by the plans. So obviously the McDonald's access will remain unchanged according to the drawing here, but the approach to the roundabout to the north would obviously widen and be widened into 2 lanes onto the roundabout and 2 lanes off the roundabout.
So, do you want to come back on that? Yeah. So,
just to say, is there any theory? I mean, looking at that drawing, we've got that new arm that comes off where the existing, where the current, well, sorry, it's a chopped off arm actually, because it was an existing arm off the roundabout, but you've removed that. Is there any feasibility that we could put an exit off that point and take some of that traffic away from having to enter at that point? Because you do get a much better view as well as you exit that, if you're exiting that arm to the actual carriageway as to that you can from that other section. It's a very sharp sort of, I just remember sitting there in my car and thinking, crikey, this is really difficult to see and difficult to get out. And there are a lot of people that hang out in the middle of the highway and edge out.
Right. The point you're making is understandable, bearing in mind that at committee level, we can't start changing plans.
Yeah.
So
which level does that happen at?
That would be when they're drawing up the original application, when they're putting the papers in to submit as their planning application. So what we have with us at the moment is the application as it stands, which we're discussing. But when it comes to wanting to make any sort of alterations to that's not for us to do. That is, we have in front of us an application which we're either going to approve or not. So that's not the way. That is the way it works. We can't start changing designs, layouts, accesses, and all the rest of it. We either like something or we don't.
Okay.
That said, I think your points have been listened to and noted. I'm seeing some nods from from behind you, but the committee is literally here because we have an application, whether it's for this or whatever, and we're either going to approve it or not. We can't start getting into detail of the actual design process.
And I think it's important that's been raised, because I think that's the thing that it's more, sometimes I think what happens in committees, and something that happens in my other hat where we're at a different planning committee, is they have these pre-committees, if you like, where you look at things and you tend to get an opportunity to pull these things apart. And it's good to be able to raise the concerns at this point, specifically having directly experienced it and watched the tailbacks happen onto that main carriageway. So I think, and it's just unfortunate it's not a little bit further back.
Do have some reassurance though that there has been a lot of consultation with as we heard, to residents but also businesses as well to get to the stage we're at now with the application. So those points would have been, I suspect, would have been in people's minds when they were coming up with the plans. But thank you for that. Councillor Tom Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I live off the 614, so I'm particularly pleased to see this come into us today. I'm sure my neighbours are, my residents are, and our MP as well, Mark Spencer, who's been lobbying on this for many years, I'm sure will be pleased to see this coming through. I did have some points and some questions. They've actually mostly been answered during the presentation, so thank you for that. I did just want to loop back to the hedges and the trees point. So anything, am I clear in thinking anything basically we kind of chop down because of this, we basically replant? So pretty much a like-for-like replacement of what we do. And if so, I'm assuming those are going to be native plants, native hedgerows. The second point was, I know we say that the application, well, the construction will have to start no later than, I think it's 5 years, but do we, assuming today passes, do we have a realistic point of when it will start? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. So yes, the replacement hedges, vegetation and so on, and the timescales. What can we say about that? Actually, that reminds me of just a clarification I had on that, because on this and the other applications, it's saying that construction is to be started within 5 years. Normally, of course, on applications, we tend to go for 3 years, don't we? So maybe just a little explanation as to why we're saying that. So that might be helpful as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got the landscaping plan for Ollerton on the screen. Yes, you're correct that hedges, where hedges have to be removed, they will be replanted, and they will be replanted with generally species-rich native or appropriately native species for the area, and that is covered by planning condition, including their management to make sure that they do actually establish and develop. So that is in hand. On the matter of the 5 years, you're correct that the statutory commencement for development is 3 years. And if you do not commence with development within the 3 years, then permission lapses and an applicant would need to reapply for planning permission. In light of the fact that we have a project with 6 proposals that will all be staggered, those works will not take place at the same time, there is, I believe, a need to extend that to 5 years for commencement, to ensure that these can go ahead, and that is in my view a reasonable allowance that we've made there. I'm not sure of the exact order, but I believe Ollerton is one of the priorities for work in terms of the programme, in which order they do them in. I believe Ollerton is one of the priorities. I haven't got the exact timescales in front of me, but it is available somewhere.
Well, I just saw a nod from the applicant when we said Ollerton is a priority. There's a thumbs up as well, so I think that's the answer to that question. Thank you. Any other points, questions on this? Councillor Camilleri?
Just make an observation on what Councillor Owen was on about. I've used this road for years and years. I come from Mansfield. It's very difficult to get to this road from Mansfield. You get to the Ollerton roundabout, it can be really, really busy. But the main road itself should have been a dual carriageway. It's a main arterial road through the centre of Nottinghamshire, covering all aspects of Nottingham, loads of different districts. And we're bitting and bobbing, and the traffic will back up. It will take the rat runs. It will speed. We should have made some proper development here. And it's like everything else. Hopefully, levelling up should take in consideration things like this. This is a major part of our county, and it should be a proper road. You get one distraction on this road, and you are blocked back at Loudon for 25 minutes, which is quite frustrating. I often wonder if this had been down some leafy suburb down south, would they have dual carriaged it many years ago? And I actually think they would have done. We've put up with a lot of things in our past, and we should start thinking this is all very good, but I will guarantee you that somewhere along the line we'll have to dual carriageway it. It's a main road, and I think I agree with Councillor Hunter. That's only an observation, and let's hope it all works. But I've got a feeling that you'll still get backups, and you'll still get rat runs, and you'll still get speeding, because we're doing it half-cocked, so to speak. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your measured opinion there, Councillor Camilleri. Well, indeed, I'm bound to say, because I have to, that we can't really speculate as to what might happen in the future. We can only discuss what was before us, but points are noted, and probably no need to come back on that. But thank you. I think, and I would try and reassure you that your points about different areas of the county and having things done or not is completely irrelevant to this committee. So, but thank you. That is not necessarily the case. That happens. Right. Okay. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'll probably echo some of Councillor Camilleri's thoughts there. I certainly think if we're in the home counties, this would have been dual carriageway 40 years ago. By and large, I really do like the plans, as I do with most of the improvements that are being brought before us today. And I want to thank the applicant and the team for the sterling work that they have done on all the applications. I'm not opposed to the works that are being proposed, and I do intend to go with recommendations probably on every other application we've got before us for this section. However, for me personally, regardless what mitigation is put in, it's unfathomable to me that we remove a section of a triple SI, regardless of mitigation. I worry that there's potential for setting a precedent, and I also worry about what damage could be done to that particular section of the triple SI from works that or items that we may have not seen. So I will not be opposing this motion, but for that reason I'm afraid I cannot support it today. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Yes, you raise an important point, the triple SI, and it's unusual to and indeed, as we heard, it goes against recommendations or guidance to do what we're doing. But at the end of the day, you have to measure up the pros and the cons. And I do take a lot of hope the fact there are mitigation factors and land is being allocated to make up for the part of the SSI that's been lost. But I hear what you're saying. I understand that. Right. Any other points, or shall we make a decision on this? So let's, in the traditional way, show of hands for those in favour of the application. Please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. Thank you. Anyone against? No one against, and abstentions, one abstention. Okay, thank you. So Ollerton Island is passed, and as colleagues have said, my word, how many years have we been waiting for this?
Too long.
Far too long, and excellent news. I think wherever we live in the county, we've all used the Ollerton Island, and we all know how difficult it is. So thank you, colleagues, for that. So we'll move on to the next one of this, which is the Mickledale Lane, Mickledale Lane at Bilsthorpe Island. So again, comments, questions, queries, decisions. Any comments to make on this, or shall we go just straight to a decision? Yep, because it's relatively straightforward, this one. So show of hands in favour, please. So I think that's unanimous. No one, and for the record, no one against and no objections. Then we go to the White Post Island at Farnsfield. Any comments? Again, it's very small amount of work on this. Show in favour. That's unanimous as well. So again, for the record, no one against, no abstentions. Then we go to Warren Hill. So again, any comments or points on this, or are we happy to make a decision? Yep, let's go to the vote. So hands up, those in favour. Thank you, that's unanimous. No one against, no abstentions. Then Loudon. It's hard to say Loudon Roundabout. Loudon Roundabout. Again, Councillor Smith, please. Sam Smith. And then Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chairman. I speak to this on 2 points, really, because I'm a county councillor for Newark East and the Borough Councillor for Trent Valley, and both of them butt up to Loudon Roundabout. So my residents in Newark will be delighted at the impact it's going to have on them coming from Southwell and Kelverton all the way into Newark, and my borough residents will be pleased coming from Stoke Bardolph, Gedling and into Loudon there and Southwell there, and I've myself have been stuck in there for about 20 minutes, and if you don't leave before 3 o'clock, you're not going to make a 4:30, 5 o'clock meeting in Newark, let me tell you. So I think this is to be welcomed. I note that the loss of trees and green space are going to be replaced, and that's going to add a net gain benefit to biodiversity, so that's really good as well. It says in the report that journey times will be reduced, and I note that the applicant said about it will save roughly about, well, it will add, if we don't do anything, journey times will increase by 7 minutes or so due to the housing additions at Teal Close, which again is in my patch. My question really is, what do we expect the journey time saviour to be on the back of this application, please?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. So, journey time, can we explain that?
I don't
it's
have...
a difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it has been modelled. I don't have the modelling in front of me, but we know that, as you know, that there are peak time issues at that roundabout, and there is additional traffic growth from developments. Teal Close, you mentioned, which is over at near Colic, isn't it? And so the modelling basically steers, it says that it will get worse, and therefore an intervention is required in terms of increasing the capacity of this junction. And that is really why, that is partly why it's identified as requiring improvement. It's the existing problem and the modelling going forward. I think overall the throughput, as I say, the throughput of this junction would increase, and in particular you've got the proposal for a left lane from the Nottingham Road onto the Epperstone bypass, effectively. So there would be that additional left-only turn lane, and that will help in that direction for people going north. So effectively, it should flow. It should flow better as a result of it being enlarged.
I think that's the main point. Is that you can't really commit to a time saving, but the fact is the flow will be improved, and that has got to be good for the motorists who are using it, but dare I say as well, it's got to be better for the environment as well, because it cuts down the queuing traffic and all the rest of it. So I hope that's some help to your query. Councillor Adams, please.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions from me on this. Agree again hardly with what Councillor Smith has said around queue sizes. We do suffer from quite heavy queue sizes, and in fact do back up all the way into Burton Joyce often, specifically as the times that Sam's said. So that will make a huge difference. I'm really glad to see the pedestrian access there as well, the crossing. The crossing being something that's obviously caused, at the moment, residents are literally taking their lives in their hands to cross that road, because you, as you turn left currently, with any sort of acceleration, you're on them straight away because the crossing is at the actual point of junction. So really happy to see that coming into play. I just wanted a quick question around the preserving of the cricket ground, because there was a lot of local concern around the loss of its ability to be a competitive cricket ground because of its reduction in size. I just wondered how we've overcome that, I guess, from the elliptical roundabout you've mentioned, because that will require less width on its side, which would have taken some of that away. So just really a point on that. Also, this high-grade topsoil that we are removing, I assume we're removing it. I just wonder what feasibility that could be for local residents to access as a resource if they so needed it, instead of it just going off to some hole in the ground somewhere. And what was the final thing? Obviously, just to back up again what Councillor Camilleri said around the dualling, and also Councillor Rowan as well, these developments that we're doing, in theory, I guess, if that ever did become a situation in the future, because of the fact we are widening, it would be easier to link up to dualling if that became something for the future. And so we're not losing money as a result of investing in this now, rather paving the ground to help that future connection development in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So cricket ground and topsoil That's a new one on there. I've not had a question about what do we do with topsoil, but we'll see if we've got an answer for that. And thank you for your comments about the pedestrian crossing. Yes, you're absolutely right. That is to be welcomed. So what can we say about the cricket ground and the soil, please?
Yes, I can say that the drawings here, the plan completely avoids impacting on the cricket ground. That message was heard at the earlier design stage from the community, and you know, they've basically pulled that back, and there is no impact on the cricket ground, no impact on the mature trees that surround the cricket ground, no impact on the listed war memorial and the green area. That's really why we've got an elliptical roundabout, is to avoid that impact. In terms of soils, the water attenuation area there that you can see on the western corner, that would be in the current arable field, and as I referred to earlier in my reports and my presentation, that is understood to be good quality agricultural land. We are conscious that soils should be put to good beneficial reuse, and in my condition number 9 regarding construction management, there is a requirement for a detailed construction management plan to be developed, and within that there is a soils and waste section, and there is a requirement to have a management strategy to obviously minimise impact on soils, and also identify reuse opportunities for surplus soils, putting them to a good use. So whether that is locally, it remains to be determined. But we're looking at making best use of that soil elsewhere, and that will be proposed by ultimately the applicant and the contractor, if and when they're appointed, and will be subject to our scrutiny under condition 9.
So condition 9R and S to be
9S.
Precise.
Is the other point? I've done it. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So I hope.
Future development.
Okay.
Again, we can't really predict what's going to happen in the future. We've got what is in front of us. Who knows? It's like any road scheme. You know, I remember the A46 before that was dualed. I mean, there'd been campaigned to do all that for 50 or more years, and so these things don't happen quickly. But eventually things do happen. But we are now with this scheme here as it is in front of us to decide on. Right, any more comments on this one? Actually, I did have a query on it. The new little access road that we're putting in for the housing there, it's on the map there. Will that be a sort of highways road, or will that be a sort of private road? Just out of interest, really. It's.
I believe that's the case, Chair. That it would be part of the adopted highway area.
Yeah. So the point being that it wouldn't be saddled onto a third party in effect. So yeah. So it's just a query. Right. Okay. Ready to go to a decision on this. So show of hands for those in favour. Please show. So that again is unanimous, and no one against and no abstentions. And then we come to the end of the route, which is at the Kirk Hill junction at East Bridgeford. Councillor Adams?
Sorry, I do drive this road
don't apologise.
a lot.
No, I do. So do I. I know the road very, very well, so don't apologise.
The East Bridgeford side of it, again, you know, we've talked consistently about the tailbacks, and I really do think the changes that you're going to make here will make a positive difference to that, not only improving or reducing local emission issues around the fact of idling engines, and by increasing the speediness that we can get traffic away from there. It is disappointing to see a loss of hedgerow, and particularly mature hedgerow. As we know, wildlife takes a significant time to return, in some cases to wild areas. So once we lose them and then we reanimate them again, it does take time. But I'm very happy to see that we are replacing it with native hedgerow, which is, again, incredibly important to ensure that we are attracting the right species and insects, animal species and insects to that section. So that's a really, really positive thing. And because of that reanimation, really happy to see the work done on the biodiversity net gain across the entire development. You know, we should always leave things better than we found them, if we can, and if we have to make alterations which are subsequently damaging to the local greenery and wildlife, we should absolutely ensure we put those back. And like I said, if we can do it in some cases better and stronger and with more of a positive species impact, then we're absolutely doing the right thing. So thank you. That's all I have to say on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Adams. Thank you for those comments. Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This aspect of the developments have been discussed ad nauseum at East Bridgford Parish Council, which I've attended, and I'm pleased to see that East Bridgford's comments were taken on board. I'm particularly pleased that pedestrians and horse riders have been accommodated with a Pegasus Crossing. I think it will take a little bit of psychological positioning in persuading people that, you know, because I suspect there are compromises necessary, and with the Pegasus Crossing being 100 metres away from the actual junction, I think it will take a bit of education for people to walk that far. But I can see that it would make sense to have something that benefits both horses and pedestrians. So I hope that that is a success. But all in all, I'm pleased that the work done so far has received broad support in that vicinity. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And again, you made a similar point to Councillor Adams about it's regrettable about the hedging and loss of hedgerow, but it is going to be replaced. And also, without, I'm not being blasé here when I say this, but wildlife is remarkably tolerant and it will recover. The wildlife does, because we've seen it elsewhere, don't you? See places that have been, for example, abandoned or whatever and grown up, before long it does come back. So, but I do absolutely understand your points, and thank you for your comments about the parish council. Again, they were one of the many consultees in the application. Do you want to come back on those, Mr. Marshall, please?
Yeah, thank you. Very briefly, yes, we did take on board the parish council's comments, and we worked with rights of way colleagues as well. The photo on the slide at the moment shows the existing very basic pedestrian crossing over the road. It doesn't really lead anywhere, but there are people that do use it. And you're right that the Pegasus Crossing, being 100 metres south, would be quite a diversion for people. In that respect, and with the support from the Rights of Way team, we are requiring under condition 11G details of replacement dropped curbs in that location within the junction. So there will be an additional simple crossing point replicating pretty much what's there, not pretty much, but similarly what's there now for those people that just want to go directly across. So they will have the choice. They could either use the Pegasus Crossing or they could use the uncontrolled crossing within the junction. So I think we've catered for all users in this scheme.
Thank you very much. Is that helpful? Good. Any other comments or questions, or shall we make a decision on this one? I think no, we'll make a decision. So, as before, hands up those in favour of the application, please show. That's unanimous again, so no one against and no abstentions. So that's the final part of the 614 application, and thank you, colleagues, for your input on this. But particular thanks to the applicant, and who's spent probably years working on this, I would imagine, and also to Joel and the team in the planning team, who put a tremendous amount of work in producing reports that are clear and concise. And we must welcome this decision. I think it's a long time coming. Yes, there will be some disruption where it's being constructed. That is inevitable. But in the long term, I think the advantages, I think and hope, will outweigh the slight negatives. And also thank you to the members of the public who came along as well to make their points. So we'll move on to our next application now, which isn't the A614. This is completely different. So I'll just wait for our visitors to depart. You're welcome to stay. These are fascinating applications, but thank you very much. So we now move on to Wigsley, and this is the creation of a fish farming pond at land off North Scarl Road, Wigsley. I'll formally move the recommendation on page 326. Councillor Creamer.
Formally second to reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. And it's Jonathan, Mr. Smith, to talk us through this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission to make modifications to the depth of one of a series of ponds proposed to be excavated as part of a wider fish farm development on land near Wigsley Village. Deepening of the pond would recover approximately 70,000 tonnes of sand and gravel, and therefore has been processed as a mineral extraction scheme by the County Council in its capacity as the Minerals Planning Authority. Planning application site incorporates predominantly agricultural land to the southeast of Wigsley Village, a small rural settlement approximately 18 kilometres north of Newark town centre and 11.5 kilometres to the west of Lincoln city centre. In November 2019, planning permission was granted for the development of a commercial fish farming facility at Wigsley after a successful appeal following a refusal of planning permission by Newark and Shore District Council. The fish farm development incorporates a series of comparatively shallow clay-lined ponds excavated to a maximum depth of 1.5 metres across a site extending to 26 hectares. The shallow depth of the ponds meant that they did not penetrate the sand and gravel mineral resource, which underlays the site. The consented scheme ensured that most of the material excavated from the construction project would have been retained on site and used for landscaping, with only a limited quantity of topsoils transported off-site. The planning application being considered today seeks to make modifications to one of the originally approved fish rearing ponds located in the northeast corner of the wider fish farm development site. The depth of the pond, known as Pond FP2, would be increased from 1.5 to 6 metres, resulting in the excavation of around 70,000 tonnes of the underlying sand and gravel, which would be recovered, processed and exported as an aggregate. The pond would be extracted as the first phase of the wider fish farm development, so that it is available to function as a settlement lagoon to manage suspended solids arising from the construction works of the wider project. Following the completion of the construction project, the deepened pond would enable the business to mature fish to a greater age and weight. The excavation of Pond FP2 to its greater depth would take up to 12 months. Excavated mineral will be stockpiled and sold over a further 12-month period. It is projected that the haulage of the mineral to market would result in an average of 15 HGV loads per day, Monday to Friday, with all traffic routed south from the site entrance and along Wigsley Road, Hives Lane, Bestthorpe Road and Sand Lane to Bestthorpe, where it would join the A1133 and in turn the A46 to the south or the A57 to the north. In terms of planning consultation responses, Newark and Shore District Council have raised an objection based on their concerns that the current proposals to deepen Pond FP2 are not compatible with the wider approved fish farm scheme, rendering the original fish farm planning permission unimplementable in its current form. The district considers that the County Council should delay the determination of the mineral extraction submission until such time that the District Council determines an application for the wider fish farm development which is consistent with this proposed scheme. The district also consider it is inappropriate to link the proposed mineral scheme to a planning permission that has not yet been determined by planning conditions. Further correspondence reiterating these points again have been received since papers were published. Weekly parish meeting object to the planning application, raising concerns that the works to deepen the pond would create excessive noise, dust and traffic disturbance and ecological impacts over a 2-year period. The parish questioned whether the development can be considered to be incidental mineral extraction in the context of Minerals Local Plan Policy DM13, given that any granted permission would preclude the implementation of the existing consent granted on appeal. The parish comment on the poor condition of the road surfacing and markings at the Eagle-Spalford crossroads, which HGVs would utilise to transport the excavated mineral, raising road safety concerns. Finally, the parish raised concern that the applicant may submit subsequent applications to extract further mineral reserves if this application is approved. 4 letters of representation have been received from local residents, which reflect the concerns raised by the parish meeting, specifically in terms of the proximity of the works to the village and the resulting noise, and the level of HGV movements on local roads. Other consultees have not raised objections to the application, including North Castilian District Council, the Environment Agency, Natural England, NCC Highways, Archaeology, Flooding and Nature Conservation Officers, Fires, Noise Engineer and Reclamation Officer and Upper Witham Drainage Board. The key planning policy for assessing the development is Minerals Local Plan Policy DM13, which sets out the policy in relation to incidental mineral extraction carried out as part of a wider development project. This policy is supportive of incidental mineral extraction, subject to it providing environmental and other benefits, and the scale and duration of mineral working not resulting in adverse environmental impacts. In terms of the benefits derived from the development to the business, the deepening of Pond FP2 will provide both silt management benefit during the construction phase and will benefit the viability and productivity of the fish farm business once operational. The benefits of the development are set out within paragraph 31 of the report. The economic benefits to the wider business are positively supported by paragraph 81 of the MPPF, which requires significant weight to the benefits in the planning assessment. In terms of addressing the matters raised by Newcastle District Council and Weekly Parish Meeting regarding the consistency between the current submission and the wider fish farm development, officers agree with the District Council's conclusion, reiterated in a further response received after papers were published, that the modifications proposed within this current application effectively rendered the approved district planning permission unimplementable, with a need to agree a revised scheme with the district to ensure consistency between the two developments. This link is proposed to be provided by the suggested condition 2, which ensures that any planning permission issued today could not be implemented until such time that there is a further planning permission in place with the District Council which is consistent. The suggested planning condition does not set any assumption that the approval of a modified scheme from the District Council will be automatically forthcoming, and if planning permission is not granted by the district, then the planning condition would restrict a commencement of the NCC planning permission. It is not therefore considered necessary or appropriate to hold the determination of this application in abeyance whilst a further approval is sought from the District Council. A decision in connection with the deepening of Pond FP2 at this stage is considered to be helpful to both the applicant and the district insofar that it provides a level of certainty regarding the acceptability of the minerals extraction scheme at the site. In terms of the environmental effects of the development, the extraction of Pond FP2 to a greater depth and the recovery of the underlying mineral represents a significant development project. The assessment of the planning application has carefully examined the magnitude and significance of the environmental effects of the works as required by Minerals Local Plan Policies DM13 and Policy DM1 protecting local amenity. The haulage of minerals resulting from the deepening of Pond FP2 would increase the average number of HGVs to 15 loads or 30 movements a day during the 12-month haulage phase of the development. The haulage vehicles would be routed to the south of the site towards the A1133. These vehicles would travel along sections of road under the administrative control of Lincolnshire County Council, and therefore Highways consultation advice has been taken from both Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire Highways authorities. Whilst the vehicle numbers represent a significant uplift from the previously approved levels, the Highways Consultation Advice confirms that the proposed vehicle numbers and haulage route would not result in any significant adverse highway safety impact. Specifically, Lincolnshire Highways Authority has reviewed the condition of the road, including the road markings at the Spalford-Eagle crossroads, confirming the safety of the use of this junction for the traffic levels proposed. The accident data of the proposed route has also been reviewed, confirming that whilst there have been some minor accidents along the transport corridor, none have involved HGVs, and the data does not indicate that haulage arrangements would result in any severe highways impact. Planning conditions are recommended to regulate the routing of and weekly number of HGV movements, although there is an oversight in the schedule of recommended conditions, as details limiting HGV numbers has been omitted. It is therefore recommended that Condition 19 is amended as detailed on this slide should members resolve to grant planning permission. The additional wording is highlighted in red. The development is considered to be compliant with highway safety and amenity protection policies set out within the Minerals Local Plan Policy DM9 and Newark Insured Allocations and Development Management Document Spatial Policy 7. Noise emissions from the proposed development have been examined, where it is shown that the deepening of Pond FP2 would result in no greater noise in Wigley than the scheme previously approved for the wider site. The noise assessment calculates the level of noise at the nearest residential properties and demonstrates the development would operate in compliance with the limits set out within the government's planning policy guidance for minerals development. Planning conditions are recommended to regulate the level of noise emissions and ensure compliance with Minerals Local Plan Policy DM1 and Newark Insured Allocations and Development Management Document Policy DM5. The modifications to the depth of Pond FP2 would not be visibly perceptible once the pond is backfilled with water, with only visual change above water level from the scheme granted on appeal being the emission of an island. This modification would not result in significant changes to the visual or landscape effects of the project. The stockpiling and processing of sand and gravel would have a temporary visual impact, but controls regulated by planning condition relating to maximum storage heights and the provision of screen bunding around the boundary of the site would reduce the visual prominence of these activities. In terms of ecology, significant impacts to habitats and species as a result of site clearance works are not anticipated, and following the re-landscaping of the site, the development should result in a net gain to biodiversity. Environmental impacts and emissions in terms of dust release, flood risk and drainage, potential ground contamination from the former airfield use of the site, and archaeology have been reviewed, and appropriate mitigation and controls have been identified where necessary within the schedule of planning conditions to ensure there will be no significant harmful impacts. Overall, it is concluded that the deepening of Pond FP2 will be beneficial to the wider fish farm development both during the construction and operational periods and would not result in any harmful impacts. The planning application is therefore supported by Minerals Local Plan Policy DM13 and the wider policies in the development plan. The recommendation is therefore to support a grant of planning permission subject to the planning conditions set out within Appendix 1 of the report and the amendments to Condition 19. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. Right. Do any members have points of clarification? Councillor Tom Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not so much a point of clarification as a question for you. Sorry, I should have raised this at the start. It's just a question about interest and conflict of interest. I sit on the Newark and Sherwood Planning Committee as well. Does that constitute an interest?
We'll take advice from our legal advisor.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it doesn't necessarily, ultimately, it's a matter for yourself. If you sat on a committee where this subject matter has been discussed, it would be a question for yourself as to whether you believe you're biased or predetermined by nature of the fact that you've sat on a committee. What I would say is Section 25 of the Localism Act 2011 provides that you won't automatically be considered to have been biased or predetermined by something you may have done in a different capacity. But that just takes away an automatic assumption. Fundamentally, it's just a question for yourself. If you've looked at the matter, you feel like you've got a closed mind on it, then yes, you would probably have to step down from this committee today. If you looked at the matter and you've still got an open mind about it, then you wouldn't necessarily be biased or predetermined. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So it's entirely up to you, Councillor Smith, as to whether you have an interest or not.
Thank you.
What do you think?
I'm satisfied to stay on the committee if acceptable.
I think from what we've just heard and from what you said, I think it's perfectly acceptable. But thank you for raising that point. Anyone got any clarification about the application? So we don't have any speakers on this item. So we now debate and decide. So does anyone wish to make any points or questions or comments? Councillor Owen.
Chairman, I find this a rather strange application in terms of the sequence of events and the history of it. And I don't know whether we're able to get more of an explanation. Clearly, the original application was determined at district level and did not include a deep pond, or whatever you want to call it. And that application was rejected, but then the vagaries of our planning system, regrettably, because I don't like the system at all, but that's another story, it was overturned on appeal. And then the applicant comes to us and say, well, it's absolutely essential if I'm going to get the best out of my fish farm to have a deep pond. And I've done this, and I think it said in Peterborough, it's a while ago since I read the previous report. I did this in Peterborough, and it's all hunky-dory. Now, if it was so vital and so important to have a deep pond for the efficiency and cost effectiveness of the business, why was that not in the original application? Is it because they thought it, as it actually happened, it would get turned down if it went beyond what they were proposing? And now they've come back for a second bite at the cherry. And to my...
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Yes, Councillor Purdue.
We're having speculation here. Can we stick to the actual application before us and just, ask questions on that? Thank you.
Chairman, that's exactly what I was doing, and I will not be bullied by the councillor over there into keeping quiet, so he can forget about that.
If we get back to the application.
I am getting back to the application. I find this strange. I find it odd, I have to say. And is it a means of a backdoor way of getting into mineral extraction that, if it was purely for mineral extraction, wouldn't be permitted anyway? Our minerals local plan provides more than enough, I think, of the materials that are needed over the lifetime of the plan without this additional material. And what I'm also concerned about are the excessive levels of, in my view, excessive levels of lorry movements. It's broken down into it's 15 in. Yeah. Or was it 15 out? It doesn't matter. But if you go in, you've got to come out. So that's 30 movements. And over a 5-day period, I don't know whether it's 5-day working or whether it's 6-day working, 5-day working, that, by my arithmetic, and I stand to be corrected, is 150 lorry movements. Now, when you start to put it all together, that seems to me to be an awful lot. And my view is, and I have to disagree with the planning officer, and I often do that, but they don't take it personally, DM13, I didn't think, reading it, point 1, paragraph 1, whatever you want to call it, was necessarily met. They will be supported. The scale and duration of the mineral extraction does not result in adverse environmental impacts. Well, I think it does. I think 150 lorry movements a week is an adverse effect, and that is going on for 12 months. And therefore, I don't, at this point, feel able to support the recommendation to grant approval.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Owen. So can we just help on the query about the lorry movement and also the reasoning behind? Well, we can't really say the reason behind, but my understanding is we're discussing this because the extraction being applied for is significant, so it becomes a minerals application in effect. But can you just help us on that, please?
Yeah, and I think something to point out is that had the applicant decided from the very off that the mineral extraction was a necessary element, an application for the entire fish farm, including that element of mineral extraction, would have come to the county council for the determination. In terms of the HGV movement, yes, it is a, compared to that, it was a very minimal number. I think it was literally 1 HGV a day anticipated as part of the district council permission, and so yes, it's clearly a significant uplift for a 12-month period whilst the material is taken from the site. But we've had no highways objections, and that's from 2 highways authorities, both ourselves and Lincolnshire. And just going back to going to policy DM13, yeah, we've taken advice from various specialists, and officers' conclusion is that there wouldn't be adverse environmental impacts resulting from the proposed development, hence the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. I hope that's some help to you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Cream,
Well,
do you want
that's
to
all
make
right, it's been answered.
Oh, right.
Point of clarification. I'm
yeah.
Councillor Smith. That's not Councillor Smith.
Mr. Smith. What did I say? Oh, I've done it again. I'm sorry. Yes, I have. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've demoted you. I'm terribly sorry. Yeah. Well, Mr. Smith, I'm very sorry that I've muddied the waters by. Yes. Well spotted, Councillor Smith, for that deliberate mistake. Right. Help. So, right, we've got that. So we've heard Councillor Owen's point there. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on this? I mean, this is an interesting application, not just because of the physical application, but as we've touched on, the relationship with the decision that Newark and Sherwood have taken and will take. And I don't think I've sat on a committee before where we've had what's known as a Grampian application, which this is, isn't it? So it's new territory for us, but that all said, we've got the application in front of us as far as the county council side of things is concerned. So any other questions, comments, or shall we make a decision on this? No, I don't see any hands, so let's make a decision. The recommendations have been moved and seconded, and show of hands in favour of that recommendation, please show. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think. Is there anyone against? 1, 2, 3. 3 against, and is that an abstention, Councillor Adams, and an abstention from Councillor Adams? So 6, 3, 1. So permission is granted anyway from this for the county council aspect. But as you've seen in the conditions, there is further decisions needed by Newark and Sherwood for the applicant. Right, okay, thank you for that. So we'll move on to what I think is our final application. Yes, it is our final application for today. This is Cromwell. This is land to the north of the existing Cromwell quarry, the Great North Road to Cromwell, and its proposed relocation of mineral processing or existing mineral processing plant and equipment as per the application. So yes, I need to formally move the recommendation, which is on page 372 of the pack. Councillor Creamer, please.
Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. And so now it's to Mr. Smith again to talk us through the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There is a long history of mineral workings at Cromwell, with standard gravel currently being extracted by Cemex from 35 hectares of land located between the A1 and the River Trent. The operational quarry is located immediately south of more historical sand and gravel workings, previously worked by Lafarge Tarmac, but which is now predominantly revegetated and renaturalised and designated as a local wildlife site for its wetland ecological interest. This development would see Cemex's existing mineral processing plant and associated stockpiling areas, weighbridge, office, canteen, changing rooms and infrastructure relocated 250 metres north onto a 4.73 hectare parcel of land within the historical Lafarge Tarmac Quarry area. The relocation of the plant site would enable Cemex to extract approximately 18 months worth of sand and gravel reserves, circa 395,000 tonnes, which lie beneath their existing plant site and benefit from planning permission under the existing planning permission for the wider Cromwell Quarry site. Vehicles will continue to access the quarry by the existing haul road with no change to HGV numbers. The Council's publicity and consultation in connection with the planning application has not resulted in any objections being raised. In terms of the planning merits of the application, the relocation of the mineral processing plant site and associated infrastructure will enable CEMEX to extract previously consented sand and gravel reserves from beneath the existing plant site, ensuring these minerals do not become sterilised and thus provide for a sustainable use of this mineral resource. The extraction of the minerals would make an important contribution to Nottinghamshire's annual mineral output, contributing to the land bank of mineral reserves in compliance with Nottinghamshire Minerals Local Plan Policies MP1 and MP2. The intended rate of extraction, processing and export of mineral is to remain unchanged, with exported material proposed to be transported in the same manner in terms of vehicle types, payloads and times as at present. There would also be no change in the number of staff working at the site. Accordingly, the proposal will not result in any additional operational traffic movements, either in total or within any given period of time. It should be noted that the extant permission for the site allows for mineral extraction to continue until May 2028, but the applicant anticipates the reserves under the planned site and the remaining reserves on site to be exhausted by the end of 2024. Therefore, working reserves under the plant site would not extend the permitted life of the extant permission. Vehicle access to the quarry will continue to be from the A1. Southbound A1 traffic can access and depart the quarry directly from the A1 utilising the existing slip roads. Northbound A1 traffic obtains access to the quarry via the existing bridge over the A1. These vehicles do not travel through the main village centre, but do pass a number of residential properties at the northern edge of Cromwell village. The routing of delivery vehicles is currently regulated as part of the existing plan permission through a Section 106 legal agreement. To ensure vehicle routing controls continue to regulate all vehicles using this new plant site, it will be necessary to impose a further Section 106 legal agreement as part of any planning consent, and the recommendation to support a grant of planning permission reflects this. Planning conditions are recommended to ensure the ecological interests of the site are appropriately protected. The subsequent restoration of the plant site following the completion of the development to create a mosaic of habitats including flower-rich grassland, scrub, marshy grassland and seasonal ponds would bring about an overall benefit to the ecological value of the site, as well as enhancing the site's landscape character and visual appearance. The noise assessment which supports the planning application demonstrates that the proposed activities would continue to comply with the noise limits imposed under the existing planning permission for the quarry, and which has successfully controlled the noise emissions over a number of years without complaint. Dust emissions can also be satisfactorily controlled. The flood risk assessment report demonstrates the development would not negatively impact flood levels, with no change in predicted water levels in the surrounding area, nor any change to downstream river flows. The environmental assessment of the proposal therefore concludes that the proposed development would not result in any unacceptable adverse environmental impacts. The recommendation is to grant conditional planning permission, subject to the applicant entering into a further Section 106 agreement to regulate lorry movements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for that. We don't have any speakers on this, so I think we can go straight into debate and decision and any clarifications. So do we have any questions, comments, clarifications, or are we happy to take the details from the report to make a decision? So I don't see any hands going up, so detailed report again for that, so thank you. And the quarries are I've said this before on previous quarry applications, are surprisingly, well, I find them surprisingly fascinating, but maybe that's just me, but they are an important part of what we do. So we'll make a decision. Show of hands, all in favour of the recommendation, please show. And I think that's yes, that's unanimous, but for the records, no one against and no abstentions. So thank you for that decision taken. So we move on now just to the Development Management Progress Report, which I will formally move, which is on page 396.
Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. And I ask Sally, Mrs. Gill, to talk us through this, please.
Thank you, Chair. As ever, councillors, this report sets out the applications that we've received and determined over the last few months, and appendix, final appendix to the paper, Appendix A.
Yeah.
It sets out the future planning applications to come to this committee in future, and the next committee will be in November. And if you look at the schedule, we've got some interesting applications already down on that application relating to waste as opposed to minerals. So you can have a treat of waste applications. But looking at the future forward plan for this committee, there are a lot of applications covering a whole range of issues that this committee will be considering in due course. Thank you. And we're very happy to answer any questions on any individual applications that members may have.
Thank you, Sally, and never let it be said this committee is light on interesting applications and challenges, and you're quite right, there are some very interesting ones coming up in November. Does anyone have any comments or questions on this, on the work plan? No? Well, Councillor Adams, your hand's up.
Thank you. There's a... well, you've got it there, thank you. The application in Carlton East for the variation of criteria C and D of planning condition 24 for a land off private road number 3, Colic Industrial Estate.
Is that definitely coming to
It's page 400, sorry, 406. That would probably help, wouldn't it? Sorry about that. Just to confirm, that's definitely coming to full committee for approval.
This is, well, it's on the work plan. So
it's on the work plan. No, it's down as an application that's been received.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, is it on the work programme as well? I'm not sure it is.
Yes.
No.
The schedule shows that we've got that application in. What the schedule doesn't show yet is which committee that would be going to.
It may not go at all.
Or, unless you...
So yeah, so this is just really saying that an application has been received, and it's been processed and worked on by the team to decide what the next stage is.
The local member can ask for any application in their patch to be brought to committee for determination, should they wish.
May I request that right now, please? Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, yes, you may, and yes, you have. And
Yes.
that's noted. Any other questions on that? No, well, now I must thank Sally for that update, and of course that is actually Sally's final report to this committee, because as you may or may not know, Sally is, and along with our clerk here, Mr. Barker, they're finding it's all a bit too. No, I was going to say finding it too much, but no, I'm being silly now. They are both retiring, and this is their final Planning and Rights of Way Committee, and I think you're having a little gathering on Friday, I think, from memory, aren't you? Yeah. So if we can all come along on Friday, that would be, I'm sure, appreciated. But can I genuinely thank Sally and Peter? I've worked with Sally I've known Sally for many, many years, because in previous hats at the County Council, been on and off on this committee over the years, and also in my own patch, there's been a lot of work that Sally's been involved with. So I thank you for that, and indeed the whole committee will do as well. So whatever your next plan is, no pun intended, but whatever your retirement brings, best of luck to you, and indeed to you as well, Peter. So thank you very much for your guidance as well, and also for reminding me to move things when I forget to. It's invaluable. So with that said, there's no more on the agenda. We'll bring the meeting to a close. It's just coming up to 1 o'clock. Thank you again, officers and members, for all your contributions to what we've made some really significant decisions today in particular. And I thank you all. So safe journeys home, and well done for finding Newark. Thank you.